I told you all this would happen. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Strong Female Athlete Podcast. I am here doing another solo episode, and it is all on preseason nonsense. Well, thankfully, we have survived preseason. It is now a few weeks behind us. We are almost in September, and I am so happy that my athletes have stayed healthy. Thank goodness. But I've been hearing some very devastating news from some of my girls and their teammates. And I'm hearing things like my team's dropping like flies. We have 3 knee injuries on our team. We have girls with ankle sprains, quad pulls, hamstring strains, and a bunch of either catastrophic or soft tissue injuries that should not be happening. But what did I predict? A month ago, when I did my presentation on preseason fitness testing and conditioning, well, let me say mindless, stupid conditioning program by soccer coaches, I predicted all this. I predicted that coaches will injure their players this preseason, and now here we are. Here we are. I'm getting all these messages from my girls about their own teams and what's happening to their teammates. I'm getting DMs from random strangers on Instagram and X, and they're venting to me. These parents are venting to me that their team is dropping like flies. The craziest message I got the other day was our team had 3 ACL injuries in 1 week. And I had to DM this lady back and be like, did I read that correctly? 3 ACL tears in 1 week? And she said, yes. I just couldn't believe it. My jaw dropped. But, to be honest, with some of the things I've been hearing about preseason and how coaches are doing super high intensity days in a row and a ton of running volume, doing too much too soon, I believe it. I really do. And I hate to say I told you so, but I predicted this and it's a problem. And I'm going to continue to speak about it because load is a problem. When we do too much too soon with these young female athletes, too much that they're not prepared for yet, that we haven't gradually eased into, that's when we get into that high injury risk zone. And I know that I preach strength training, consistent strength training, and yes, it does reduce chance of soft tissue injury and ACL injury. And yes, girls should be doing it year round so that they can reduce that chance. But we can't ignore this other piece in injury reduction, and that is proper progression of soccer specific load, proper progression of conditioning. We can't go from 0 to 100 miles per hour on the first day of preseason when our girls haven't acclimated to that much volume of running. And I really don't think a lot of these coaches have a plan in place. They just scribble down in their notebook, okay, we're going to do a beep test today, and then we're going to move on to an 11v11 inter squad scrimmage today on the same day. Well, let me tell you, an 11v11 scrimmage is stressful enough. So why are we fatiguing our players beforehand and doing a beep test before that? What is the purpose? Why are we driving so much fatigue and getting into that high injury risk zone? It just doesn't make any sense, which is why I'm going to continue to speak on the load management piece. So with load management, it's all about building our athletes up to handle higher loads in the game. So when we're in preseason, the goal isn't to be extremely fit and in peak fitness. It's to gradually build it up, gradually get prepared for the first game, and be able to field a fresh, energized squad, a full squad, ideally, and not have 5 players at a time dropping like flies on week 1. And that gradual progression comes with a lot of pre-planning and time on the coach's end. And ideally, for the principles of load management, we don't want to spike load too much too soon. We don't want to spike it too high each week. Ideally, we don't want to spike loads higher than 10% each week. We want to remain in that well-balanced zone where we aren't overworking our athletes, but we also aren't under preparing them. So both extremes are a problem. So we have to find ways to really get our program in place and really quantify it. Now, for now, the load management I do with my athletes is ratings of perceived exertion based, but it's really important to get the conversation going with your athletes. How do they rate your sessions on a scale from 1 to 10? 1 meaning it's the easiest thing they've done, 10 meaning it's so hard they can't walk the next day. So we want to really have that open communication with our athletes if we're not using GPS sensors and maybe we are a youth club or we're a strength coach in the private sector who wants to do this easily with their athletes and get the conversation going. We have to understand where they stand with the intensity of the sessions, because if I see my athletes on week 1 in off-season training when we began in the summer, I don't want them rating that first session a 9 out of 10, because that tells me they weren't built up to handle that at that point in time. That tells me their muscles haven't adapted enough to get used to the session that we're doing, whether it's strength or our speed, agility, and conditioning. I would rather want them to rate that very first session of off-season training, maybe a 4 or 5 out of 10, maybe on the more low to moderate scale. And then we slowly progress over the summer safely so the bodies can adapt. We're not spiking load too high each week. And then maybe at the end of summer, we end with an 8 or 9 out of 10. That's what load management is. It's not necessarily tiptoeing around load and holding athletes back. It's actually zooming out and looking at the macro picture of, okay, what's my plan for this cycle of training? What's my plan for these next 3 months of the season? What am I going to start my athletes with during preseason? And where are we going to gradually go as we get deeper into the season? Because coaches, if you're listening, let me tell you, it's a long season. So if you're in youth, ECNL, ECNLR, GA, college coaches, it's a 3 to 4 month fall season. So do we really want to obliterate our athletes in week 1, or do we want to set the foundation, make sure we have a healthy squad, and then slowly build up that soccer load, that soccer fitness over time? I think we just need to completely scratch the idea that all of our athletes need to be in the best shape of their lives during preseason. Yes, they should be in good shape. They shouldn't have detrained too much in the summer. They definitely shouldn't be detraining in the summer. They should be doing speed, strength, and conditioning and still touching the ball and being best friends with the ball. But that doesn't mean we have to completely crush them in week 1. What does development mean? What does player development mean? Because you hear a lot of clubs, or you see it on their mission statements, on their social media, or on their websites, we focus on player development. Well, player development it's a long-term pursuit. We take our athletes through the proper steps, the proper progressions, so that they become the best athletes, the best players. But first and foremost, they stay healthy. Player development is nothing if your athletes are not healthy and you're not doing everything in your power to keep them healthy. And when coaches program these fitness tests, 5 fitness tests in a row, and then a full squad scrimmage, or we're doing 1v1s and then small-sided games, which actually are a lot of change of direction and a lot of load on the muscles, they're only fatiguing their players. We're not developing our players. And look, I'm not saying preseason shouldn't be challenging. It should. There's a big difference, though, between challenge and just complete fatigue. And if you're a coach and you've had your team drop like flies after preseason, you're struggling to field a team for these first few games, you really need to ask yourself the question, what have I done? So we have to be smarter than this. And parents, I know you listen to this show a lot. I want you to share this. I want you to keep getting the word out. And even though you can't control what goes on at practice, and I don't recommend you go to the coach and micromanage the situation and tell them how to do their job. Please don't do that. There's nothing more that coaches hate when you do that crap. Don't do it. I don't recommend that either. But at least share, get the conversation going that load management needs to be a non-negotiable part of the soccer culture with your team coach. One app that I've been really grateful to use right now is called Player Pulse. At least get your own girl on this app because she can at least track her load and her RPE, her exertion from each session. Is she saying every session is a 9, 10 out of 10? Well, that's a problem. That means she's in a fatigue state, and that's where we get into that high injury risk zone. Or maybe on the other extreme, because this is a problem too, maybe she's rating the team practices a 2 out of 10 throughout the training week. But then come game time, she's rating the games a 9 out of 10. Well, that's a huge spike in load that she wasn't prepared for from the practice week. So that can equal injury risk too. So we really need to find that middle ground. And it really starts with you starting to monitor it on your own if your coach isn't doing it yet. And I really recommend you check this app out, Player Pulse. It really gets the conversation going. And maybe if your coach finds out that your daughter's using it, she's tracking her load and her exertion, and you can also put in your sleep and wellness reports on this app and your energy levels. If your coach sees your daughter doing this, he might be curious. Wow, maybe I'll get my team on there. Maybe I need to really rethink how I structure my practices because wait a minute, why are all my girls rating all 4 practices a 9 out of 10 the whole week? Well, that's not good. So it's good research for coaches as well. So I really encourage to do something to track. The bare minimum is at least to do ratings of perceived exertion because it's the easiest one to do. But obviously, GPS sensors are the best. But realistically, at the youth level, some clubs don't have the resources to get GPS systems for the whole squad, for the whole club. I get that. But at the very least, what is your daughter rating her coach's sessions? Are they too high or are they too low in intensity? Is she overtraining for the game or is she under preparing? So it's really good. It's a great conversation starter because load is a factor in injury risk. And this is why sometimes you see some of the strongest athletes get hurt and everyone is shocked. Well, why did they get hurt? Oh, well, that girl trains pretty much 7 days a week. She doesn't take recovery. She doesn't manage her load properly. So yeah, that athlete's a problem too. So strength, load management, and then a lot of the other things I talk about in my books, proper nutrition, sleep, ideally getting 1 to 2 full off days a week from practices, other trainings, including skills and strength training and games, at least 1 to 2 full off days a week. Now, if you are in the ECNL and your team practices 4 days a week, and then maybe you have 2 games on the weekend, well, obviously Fridays are your day off. If you are putting another skill session on those days, even a strength session on those days, you have to make sure that your daughter is recovering and going into the game fresh. I always recommend people take Fridays fully off so that you can go into the game ready to go. Now, if there's only 1 game during the weekend, say it's on a Saturday, then you're going to take Friday and Sunday off. There's your 2 days a week. So on those 1 game weekends, really take advantage of those 2 off days a week. So that's my recommendation. And then as far as in-season strength, speed, and conditioning, this is another reason why I started to use the Player Pulse app is because I can see where my athletes stand with my in-season sessions. Now, if my athletes are rating my in-season sessions a 9 out of 10, that's a problem too, because that means they're going from my session extremely fatigued to their practice. I don't want them rating my in-season sessions a 9 out of 10. I want to be more on that moderate to low intensity level. Maybe at the moderate level, as we get further into the program, we might progress with a little bit heavier loads, but even then, we're still doing super low rep, super low set so that it's not too taxing on their nervous system and their muscles aren't sore going into practice. So when my athletes rate my in-season sessions, maybe a 4 out of 10, I'm like, perfect. They are ready to still go to practice, but we still made some incremental gains in the gym and with our speed. So that's another reason why I've been using it, because it's driven my own programming and has helped me to understand, okay, when can I push them a little bit more during in season? When do I need to pull away a little bit more? Another example is I had a girl come in last week and her team had done a bunch of fitness tests and ran a beep test and then scrimmage. And she came to my strength session, sore hamstrings. She was yawning, extremely tired. And I was like, you know what? Today with me probably should be a 2 or 3 out of 10. So we had to adjust things a little bit. And that's just another practical solution of how I use the Player Pulse app. I'll link Player Pulse in the caption below. I'm a huge fan of the app and what they're doing, and it really gives great training load targets. And if you are overtraining or if you're undertraining. So it really calculates that acute to chronic workload with ratings of perceived exertion. So again, we can't ignore that load management must be a piece in injury resiliency. So we want to make sure we're not spiking load too much too soon. We want to make sure we're preparing our athletes for loads by not going too easy on them, but too hard that they're too fatigued. So again, it's about that balance and just really tracking it and journaling it and understanding. So I hope this helps. It's really unfortunate I had to make an I told you so solo episode on preseason, but I've been doing this for so long that I continue to see this every year. And I hadn't really spoken about it too loud until this year because I'm fed up. 13 years into this and it's still happening. It happened when I was a college athlete too, but I didn't realize that it was load at the time. I didn't realize that all the fitness tests we were doing in preseason, all the 3-a-days, all the 11v11 scrimmages on the same day as a fitness test was wrong. I just thought that's what we did. But now, years later, I'm like, holy crap, everything we were doing was really messed up. And I always relate it to running a marathon. This is the best way to sum up load management. So a marathon, about 26 miles, and you have to run that marathon 3 months from now. So how do you train for that marathon 3 months from now? Well, on week 1, do you run 26 miles right out the gate, having never done that before? No, it wouldn't make sense because you would be sore. Your body hasn't adapted to that distance yet. Yeah, you would probably be extremely sore, maybe pull a hamstring, maybe get tendonitis in the heel or plantar fasciitis, who knows? But week 1 should rather be, okay, maybe I run 2 miles on the first day, then slowly progress it to 2.5, then 3, then maybe week 2 we do 2.5, then 3 miles, and then we have a lower intensity day. But over those weeks, you're still building slowly to that 26 miles. So maybe in week 4 or 5, we're getting close to the double-digit number. And it's just a gradual climb to allow the body to adapt, to build that endurance, to eventually run those 26 miles. And we can think of this like the full soccer season. So maybe your team is preparing for a showcase in November or December. Right now it's September. So starting now, we're slowly building fitness as a team. We don't really want to peak yet. We don't want to peak in preseason because when we try to peak, we end up injuring our players. We want to slowly build that peak over time. So when we get to that showcase where we want them to put on their best selves, they are healthy and extremely fit by that time. And they're also fast and fresh. They're feeling groovy. So I like to think of the soccer season as a marathon as well. So that slow buildup and not completely obliterating everyone on week 1. All right, that is my rant on preseason, my preseason review. If injuries happen to your girls, or if you have any other crazy stories, please flood the comments below because I want to spread awareness about this. Share this everywhere. You don't need to even like this video. I don't care about likes on this one. I want you to share this message if you feel other parents need to hear this, other players, your coach, maybe you need them to see this because they follow you on social media and you subtly want to put it out there so that they can maybe watch this video and learn something for once and change their ways next preseason. Share this video. Thank you guys so much. And I always love these solo episodes, and I'll see you next time.